Hey guys, in this project we're going to create something that's pretty simple but also something that's very useful that you see quite a bit, and that's a sticky nav. So we have this nav bar at the top of our little website here. We're going to create this hero image with an overlay, so we're going to style a little bit of this website here, but the main point is the nav bar that sticks to the top, and when I scroll down and I hit a certain point, you can see that it does a few things. It changes its color, it changes the text color, and it lessens the padding and makes it smaller. If I go back up to the top, it turns back black and adds that padding. So we get that nice little effect, and you see this a lot on different websites. So we figured that it would be a nice addition to the course and to the projects. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so we're going to start on our sticky nav, and the way I'm going to do this is we'll do all of the HTML now, and then we're going to style the whole rest of the page, including the hero image, the hero area with the overlay, and then in the next video we'll style the navigation and add the little bit of JavaScript that we need in order to give it that effect where it's making it active and not active depending where we're scrolling on the page. Alright, so let's start off in our HTML here. We'll just say sticky navigation for the title, and down here, first thing we're going to have here is the navigation. So I'm going to use an HTML5 nav tag, and I'm just going to give it a class of nav as well. And inside there we want a container class because we don't want the logo on this side and the links on this side to stick to the edges if the browser is too long, or too wide. So we'll set a max width of like 1200 on the container. And then inside here we want two things. One is going to be the H1. I'm just going to give that a class of logo. Usually you'll have a link around the logo. Just go to this page here. And inside here I'll just say my website. Okay, and then under the H1 we want to have our unordered list with our list items and our links. And these aren't actually going to go anywhere. Let's say home. We'll have 4 of these. So we'll do home, about, services. These are kind of the default pages that we use. And then I'm going to add a class of active onto home. So basically we just want a different color link for whatever page you're on. So if I save that, it's going to look really weird just because of the default styles we have, putting everything in the middle and so on. So let's move on under the nav now, and we're going to have our hero area. So let's have a class of hero. And we also want the container in here because we want to contain the content. And let's do an H1. We'll say welcome to my website, and then a paragraph, and we'll just do lorem 10 enter to give us 10 words of dummy text. Alright, now under the hero we'll have a section, and this section is going to also use the container class and also give it a class of content. And we'll do let's do an H2 here and say content 1, paragraph, we'll do lorem 100, and then under that paragraph we'll do, let's say an H3, we'll say content 2. Obviously this would be whatever you want on your site, so we just need something. So a couple paragraphs and headings, good. So now what I'm going to do is just comment out the nav for now because I want to style the rest of the page. That way we can do everything that we need to with the nav bar in the next video. So in our style sheet here, let's go ahead and change in the body. We don't actually need flex or anything like that. So we're going to get rid of all of this actually. And then let's just set a color of 222 for the text. And let's use Open Sans as a font. It looks a little nicer. So CSS question mark family, set that to Open plus Sans. And we'll add that here, Open Sans. And then I want to add a reset. So we want to take the margin and padding off of everything. That includes the body. Okay, so now there's no margin and padding. And then in the body, I'm going to add just padding bottom of 50 pixels just to give some room at the bottom. Alright, now the container, I'm going to set a max width of 1200 pixels, and then for the margin we want 0 top and bottom, and then auto on the left and right, which will put it in the middle. So now if I stretch this out, you can see anywhere we use the container, it's going to end right here, including the nav, which I just have commented out right now. All right, we can make this a little smaller here and here. All right, now the nav stuff will go here, but let's just put a to do here. So to do nav. All right, now I want to work on the hero area, which is this here. I want this to take up the full screen right here, all the 100 viewport heights, with a background image with an overlay. So let's take the class of hero, and let's do a, actually let's add the background image first. So the background image is going to be a URL, and I'm just going to grab it. It's from the pexels.com website, and of course you could use any image you want here. And if I save, we're only going to see it up to the height of the content, so we can't even, you know, make out the image. But let's add a height. Actually, I'm going to make this a little wider. So let's make the height of this take up the whole viewport, so 100 viewport heights, like that. All right, now I do want to add some background properties because that doesn't look how I want. So let's set, first of all, we'll do background repeat, set that to no repeat, then we'll do background size, and we'll set that to cover. Okay, as soon as I do that, we can see the whole image, and then I'm going to position it. So background position, we're going to set that to the bottom center. All right, and then yeah, that should do it for the background image. Okay, now the content inside, we want to deal with that. So let's go under the height here. Let's set the color of this to white, and let's display flex so that we can justify content center, and also we want to align items center. So it's going to put it right in the middle. We also want to text align to the center like that. And let's add, let's add a position relative, because we're going to be adding an overlay inside of it, which will be positioned absolute. I also want to just add some margin bottom to push the content below it down, so we'll do 20 pixels. So that takes up 100 viewport heights, and then when we scroll, we can see the rest of the content. Now for the overlay, we want to add an overlay because this image is way too bright. The contrast is not right here. This is unreadable. I mean, it's readable, but it's not readable enough. So we could add an extra element in the HTML to add the overlay to, but what we'll do is use the before pseudo selector. So if we say hero : before, it basically kind of, you can think of it as adding like a ghost element to style. So before, and when we use before or after, we have to add content, and you can actually store something here. You can add content like hello, which is right here. So that's getting inserted with the CSS. Now we don't want to add any text, so we're going to leave that blank. And then we want this to be just placed over this entire thing, over the hero. So we'll position it absolute within the hero, which we positioned relative. And then once we do that, we want to set the top. So basically say we're going to start it at the top 0 and left 0 position. And we want it to cover the entire thing, so the width 100%, height 100%. All right, and then we could add a background. Where's background color? So background color. Now if I say background color red, you can see that it adds an entire overlay to that area, because we positioned it relative. We started it at the top left corner, and we had it go total width, total height. Now obviously we don't want a solid color like this, so what we'll do is use RGBA, red, green, blue, alpha, and we'll make it black, and alpha, the last value, is the transparency or the opacity. So let's set that to 0.6, and now you can see we have this overlay. If I make it higher, like 0.9, it gets darker. If I do 0.2, it's lighter. I think 6 is, I think that looks good, or maybe 5. Now the problem here is that the text is actually behind the overlay, so the text is darkened, which we don't want. So I'm going to set a z-index, which is basically how close to you, how close to the screen an element is. We're going to push this back, so let's do -2, which didn't work because I want to set that to -1 and set this, the hero, to -2. So this z-index, we'll set that to -2, and now you can see it goes the image, the overlay, and then the text. All right, now I just want to kind of like make this H1 a little bigger and position it better. So let's do hero H1 and set the font size to 46 pixels. And we're going to add, let's say, margin. So margin, I want to move it up a bit, so -20 pixels, 0, and then 20 pixels on the bottom. And then for the paragraph, so hero P, let's make the font size 20 pixels, and let's make the letter spacing, we'll do 1 pixel for that. Okay, so that looks a little better. And then for the content, we need to separate some of this stuff out. So let's say content H2, and we also have an H3 in there. And let's say font size for this, we'll do a percentage, so 150% for those. And let's also do a margin, 10 pixels on the top and bottom. Separate that out from the paragraphs. And then for the paragraphs, let's say content P, we'll say color 555, and the line height, you can see how the lines are very close together, so we'll do a line height of 30 pixels, and let's do letter spacing of 1.5 pixels. So if we take a look at that, actually let's do 1 point, that's kind of much. Let's do 1.2 for that. All right. And actually, let's do 20 pixels on the headings. All right, so that's good. Now for the nav bar, and let me just show you if I make this bigger. Okay, so that's what it looks like. So not much, but it's the start of, 90% of the websites out there, just hero and then some content. So I'm going to uncomment the nav. And as soon as I do that, you'll see that we have it up here, completely unstyled. So in the next video, we're going to go ahead and style the nav and add a little bit of JavaScript to dynamically add and remove a class to basically give it that effect that I showed you in the intro. All right, so I'll see you in the next video. Okay, so now we want to start on the nav bar. And I wanted to separate this out because the website you're going to use this on in the future will be completely different. So the nav bar will be the same. So I wanted to do that all in one video. So let's go ahead and grab the nav tag. Okay, so that surrounds everything. And I'm going to add a position to this because right now you can see if I scroll, it just, it's just in the regular position, and I can scroll out, out of it. So I want to position that fixed to the top. As soon as I do that, now no matter where I scroll, it's always going to be up at the top. Now I'm going to set a background, let's do a background color, and I'm going to do 222 for the background color. And I'm going to set the top, so it's going to be 0 from the top and 0 from both the left and the right, which is going to make it go all the way across like that. Okay, and then we're going to want to add a transition here because when we start to scroll, it's going to change color and it's going to lessen the padding. It's going to have that effect. So we don't want that to just flicker in. We want that to to add a smooth transition. So we'll transition all elements, or I'm sorry, all properties that can be transitioned in 0.3 seconds with an ease in out effect. All right, and then let's start to style some of this other stuff. The container, basically I want to put, you know, the logo on this side and the UL on this side. So the container is going to be the flex box because the H1 and the UL will be the flex items inside of it. So if we look at our HTML, if I put the flex on nav, then that's going to make the container the flex item, which I don't want. So I want this to be the flex box and these two to be the flex item. So let's go right under that and do nav container and set that to display flex, which automatically is going to put the H1 and the UL side by side in a row. And I want to basically take this space here and put it in between these. So we can use justify content space between, and that will push that over to the side. Okay, I also want to align some, or let's do align items center, which will center it, you know, this way. And then let's also add some padding. Let's do 20 pixels top and bottom for the padding, and we'll take care of these list items in a minute. Okay, so we have that. We're also going to add this transition onto the container because we're going to change the padding value when we scroll and we add the active class. Now for the UL, let's say nav UL, we want these items, the list items, to be in a row, so we'll display flex. That'll automatically put them into a row. We want to get rid of any bullet points, so that's going to be set to none. And let's align items to the center, and that should be it. We'll justify center as well. And then for the links, so we have our, actually I just use nav here. We want to use the class of nav because you might have a nav somewhere else, you know. So next is the links. So let's say class nav a tags. I'm going to set the color to white, and let's get rid of that underline with text decoration none. And let's spread these out. So we'll do a padding of 7 pixels top and bottom, 15 pixels left and right. That'll, you know, separate them out a bit. And then I'm also going to add the transition. I'm going to copy this and put that here as well. All right. So, I mean, we have a sticky nav. Pretty much all you have to do is position it fixed like this, and it'll stick. But we want to have that effect where when we hit a certain point, it turns white, and it also has a little bit less padding. Okay, so when you scroll up and down, it'll give it that effect. So we're going to have a class of active. All right, so let's say class nav class active. So when it's active, I want the background color to be white. And we can go ahead and add that right here manually. Let's just add active. And now you can see it's white, so we can at least see it and style it. And then I'm also going to add, let's make the links, the active links black. So nav active A, set the color to black. All right, and then let's add a box shadow when it's active as well. So box shadow, do for the offsets 0 and 2 pixels, 10 pixel blur, RGBA black, and 0.3. So just a little bit of box shadow. Now the container, when it's active, I want to have less padding. It has 20 to begin with. So what I'll do is grab that, and right here, let's say nav active. So the active nav container, I'm going to change it from 20 to 10 pixels, right? So now if I save, you can see it's skinnier. And then I just want to have the hover. I want it to be red if I hover, or if the link has a class of active. In fact, maybe we should call it something different because we called this active, so we can call it current. And then what we'll do is say nav if the A tag has a class of current or the nav A is being hovered, then let's make the color of this hexadecimal C0392B, which is a red color, and we'll make the font weight, make that bold. All right, so if I save, you can see the current link is that red color, and if I hover, it's that red color. And that's going to be whether the nav bar is white or black, active or not. So I'm going to remove the active class on the nav now. It goes back to being black. So what the JavaScript is going to be used for is when we hit a certain point, when we scroll, we want it to turn into the active nav bar, right? So let's go to our JavaScript here. And this isn't going to be difficult. We're going to bring in our nav. So let's say const nav equals document dot query selector, and we'll select it by the class of nav. And then we want to add on the window an event listener, and we want to listen for a scroll. And when we scroll, we're going to call a function called fix nav. Okay, so down here, let's say function fix nav. Oops, no space. So function fix nav, and we want to check the scroll point. So I'm just going to do a console log here of window dot and then scroll y, because we're talking about the y-axis, which is vertical. So I'm going to open this up, and as I scroll, you can see it's going to give me that value. And I also want to see the nav element and check its offset height. So if I scroll, you can see that the nav bar's offset height, it's 73, and it's going to stay 73. But what we'll do, I want to figure out a point where we want to actually turn this into the active nav bar. So what I'll do is actually do an if statement here. So let's say if, and we'll say if the scroll Y position is greater than the nav offset height, and we'll just add 150 to that. So that's going to bring it down, to this area. So if that's true, then let's take the nav and add the class, so classlist.add of active. All right, so we want to add active, and else, so if it's less than that, then we want to remove the class. So we'll just copy that, and instead of add, we're going to remove. All right, so I'll save that, and now I'll start to scroll, and as soon as I hit this point where this is true, where the scroll Y value is greater than the offset height plus 150, then it turns to active. Okay, so it's going to take this height plus 150, so right around this point right here. Okay, it's going to turn, and if we go back up, it goes back to normal. So you see this effect a lot on websites, and there's no need for jQuery, there's no need for any extra library. It's very, very simple. So you can use this for your websites and user interfaces from now on. So that's it. Hopefully this helped you out, and gives you something you can use in the future. And that's it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next project.